Before we even dive into Namjoon's reading taste, can we just take a moment to appreciate the art? That is his hair. I mean, the blue to grayish blue transition, whoever his hairdresser is, so talented. My compliments to the chef.
Smooth like butter, like a criminal undercover.
Ever since BTS's RM's reading list came out, I've been itching to read it and I finally did. I have some thoughts and opinions, that's why this video exists. So yeah, let's find out if RM's reading taste is as smooth as butter. Let's get into it.
Yeah, get into it.
RM's reading list will be put on the screen for your reference, so screenshot it or something. Also, the list of books will be in the description box below along with their trigger warnings, so proceed without ignorance. So the first book on this list is called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, a science fiction classic and one that I enjoyed thoroughly in spite of not being into science fiction. So this is my first science fiction book, and I don't think you have to like science fiction to like this one. If you don't like this book, you are probably the reason that humans are the third most intelligent species behind mice and dolphins. The ideas, puns, jokes, phrases, and the plot have not only influenced an entire generation of writers but also people from different fields. Like the Babel Fish software that translates foreign languages into regional languages was actually named after a species of fish that Douglas Adams created in this book. So if you're reading this for the first time, chances are you'd be surprised to see how many everyday creations and everyday things you see around that are actually creations from this book. I linked 2 articles in the description box below if you want to read more pop culture references that have been influenced by this book. So I gave this masterpiece a 4.5 stars out of 5. The only con is that there are a few jokes that might go over your head, like quantum physics related jokes, but I don't really think that makes or breaks things. I enjoyed it nevertheless, and I'm not a quantum physics nerd. The Stranger is a 1942 novel by the French author and philosopher Albert Camus. Its theme and outlook are basically cited as examples of Albert Camus' philosophy and existentialism. Let me just read you the first few lines, and if that doesn't convince you to read it, I don't know what will. So, mother died today, or maybe yesterday. I can't be sure. The telegram from home says your mother passed away. Funeral tomorrow. Deep sympathy. Yep. That's all I have to say. It's quite impressive that Camus managed to write an entire novel from the perspective of the guy you would always avoid at house parties. He is the creepiest, strangest main character I've ever read from. Like, he's borderline psychopath. So I gave this one 3 stars. Overall, I'd like to say that it's an early modern classic work of alienation and indifference to life. The One to Walk Away from Omelas is an incredibly famous book among BTS's army because this one influenced the music video of Spring Day, which I absolutely love and adore. That song is just so beautiful. So we're basically dealing with this place called Omelas. It's an endless utopia. Everyone's happy, everyone's content. There's no famine, there's no hunger, there's no death. It's just a perfect place to be. For reasons unspecified, the happiness of everyone in this town is dependent on the suffering of one child. So there's this child in the dark and he's covered in his own feces in the filthiest place on earth, going through pain. He's being tormented just so that these people in this city could be happy. In the end, everything boils down to one question: does the benefit of many outweigh the suffering of a few? Which is also reflected in BTS's music video. BTS's Spring Day is basically a tribute to the Sewol ferry accident. In the beginning of the video, we see that Taeyang is feeling survivor's guilt, which is basically the guilt of having survived while his friends have passed. The shot where Jimin is on the beach basically signifies the fact that he's reminiscing their deaths. The abandoned suitcases and clothes in the background signify the fact that multiple students went with their belongings but never returned back. So it's widely known that the Korean government has been heavily criticized by the way they handle the situation, the tragedy. the media didn't report the full truth behind what happened. The families were kept in the dark about their children's lives. The most tragic part of this story is the Korean culture that's been ingrained into these students. That is to listen to their superiors and elders no matter what. So these children were told to stay in their spot instead of evacuating, while the captain of the ship and the crew members of the ship evacuated and abandoned the sinking ship. These students were left there. The captain had one job. Okay, the captain is not supposed to leave the boat unless everyone on the boat has evacuated. It's so sad that these children trusted their superiors and elders with their lives. All they did was follow orders and they passed away. So in the lyrics of Spring Day, Rap Monster RM mentions Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer is basically a movie by the Korean movie director Jun Ho Bong, the creator of The Parasite. So the movie takes place on a train in this apocalypse, and the movie symbolizes human society and classism, where the front section of the train is like filled with rich people and the government class citizens, like basically high class society, while the tail end of the train is left for the working class citizens. The way the rich and the upper class treat the working class is basically what the movie is about. This reference is a criticism to how younger people and ordinary citizens of South Korea are always expected to follow orders, even if it means being oppressed by authorities, just like what happened to the children on the ship. So in the movie Snowpiercer, one guy finally decides to revolt. So he sets out towards the front section of the train to confront the train owners and the government officials. So Rap Monster does the same thing by setting off to the front section of the train. In the mid-section of the video, we come to the Omelas references. We find the store called Omelas, and it basically signifies the town Omelas from the book The Ones Who Walked Away from Omelas by Ursula K. Le Guin. In short, it's about how someone's happiness and prosperity means someone else's suffering. There are those who ignore the suffering to remain happy forever, like ignorance is bliss. And then there are those who acknowledge the fact that someone is suffering in order for them to be happy, and they walk away from all of us, like the boys in the video. You can tell from RM's expression that he's trying to confront justice, but people are bringing him down by literally attacking him, which parallels to the same scene in the Snowpiercer. Here, Jin represents the ones who have passed away. He looks up at all the others who are climbing up, growing up, while he's stuck at the bottom, unable to grow up and go up with them, symbolizing the child from Omelas. So in this scene, we can see that they've moved on with their life. They're like trying to have fun and get back up, but they still feel the emptiness of their loss. In the beach scene, we can see that Jimin symbolically picks up shoes of the survived that washed up on the shore. The mountain piles of clothes represent the belongings of the victims. Here, Jungkook finally wakes up and runs in the same path as Rapmon to seek justice for what happened. He finds out that he's not in this fight alone. The train passing by them in the end symbolizes the fact that what's done is done and the dead will not come back. In the Snowpiercer movie, the humans are stuck living inside the train while the world is completely frozen outside, which is a symbolism of how we live in this world. So in the end, Jimin steps out of the train, out of the oppressed system, out of the government that tried to downplay the tragedy, and he invites us with it. The tree represents hope, life, and a new spring day. So let's move on to the next one. Did I mention that I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars? I just remembered something while editing this video. The beauty of BTS's music videos are that they're up for interpretation. The songs and the music videos that go with them can mean different things to different people. So like trying to uncover a definitive and objective meaning is besides the point of art. It's just up for interpretation. Okay, I'm done. The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka is basically a novella. A novella is a long short story, if that makes sense. It raises some very basic and profound questions on existentialism, like alienation, life, success, money, social positions. For a book so renowned and so famous, I thought it was okay. Mostly because it's about a guy named Gregor Samsa who wakes up one morning and realizes that he has been transformed into a giant bug. Now, the plot might seem interesting to some people, but neither do men nor do giant bugs pique my interest, so I thought it was aggressively average. I don't like short stories or long short stories. Gregor's perspective was just really slow, and he would describe everything. I think a lot of people would like it. Can't tell why. I have nothing to say. I gave it like 3 stars and I don't really think about it. Like, it's not made a lasting impression on me. So I read it and I forgot about it. I straight up hated Demian. I just don't gel with Hermann Hesse's writing style. I just found it way too pretentious and his philosophy was really baseless. So it's basically about finding yourself, and it ironically gave me another existential crisis. So I don't think I would recommend this to anyone. The mid portion of the book was such a drag to get through. It kind of lifts up at the end, but I don't think it's worth hours of my time. So read at your own risk, but I'm not recommending this. I gave it a 2.5 stars. Anything below 3 stars, I usually would not recommend. I don't even have any pros and cons to say because I zoned out. It was just so boring and baseless. The next 2 books on the list, 1984 and Kafka on the Shore, were immaculate 5-star reads, but I will not be talking about them in this video. I have a separate video planned, so I'm going to skip these 2 for now and talk about the next ones. Kim Ji-young, born 1982, was fantastic. 6 out of 5 stars. Probably one of the best books I read all year. Thank you, RM, for recommending this book. Like, my respect for RM has just grown by tenfold. RM is such an idol. He's such a role model. I cannot believe that he's reading and recommending books like these to his fans and like to anyone. It's just so heartwarming to know that. Anyways, Kim Ji-young hit a nerve in South Korea when it came out. It was one of the biggest and one of the most revolutionary books that came out in the new century. The author Cho Nam-ju basically tells the story of every woman, like every Korean woman. Kim Ji-young is not a specific person. This person could be anyone. It could be me, it could be you, it could be any woman. We follow the story from her birth in 1982 to 2016. So the plot is very simple. It's about systemic misogyny in all its shapes and forms. Kim Ji-young experiences systemic misogyny in all stages of her life. As a kid, in her own family, as a student at school, at university, at the workplace, as a wife, as a mother. The protagonist does not only suffer from women-hating machos, but from different factors like the economic condition of the country, her education, and the financial crisis of her own family. This overall powerlessness and internalized social alienation, it leads to like this female trauma that she builds up inside, and you can really feel it. As a reader, I felt really powerless while reading this. The fact that Cho Nam-ju can bring such life to a fictionalized character and make her seem so real and so raw, internalized perspective of what goes through when they're subjected to such societal gender norms. This implication of society that being woman is being a failure is like one of the main topics that are explored. This book led to a fierce debate in South Korea months before the publications. The Gangnam murder took place. Basically, a woman was murdered in a metro station in Gangnam. The perpetrator stated that he was ignored by the woman for so long that he couldn't stand it anymore and he killed her. The hate crime heated up the Me Too movement in Korea, and there was a huge backlash. So many K-pop stars and celebrities that professed reading Cho Nam-ju's feminist novella, which was highly based on her own personal experience in Korea, were attacked on the internet for reading and recommending this book. And even after the book was adapted into a movie, the actors got so much backlash and they were attacked as well. So it was a big deal in Korea when it came out. Writing style. So the writing style is very detached. We have footnotes and like studies and research everywhere. Like, it's kind of written in the format of a non-fiction book. It's a fictionalized story backed up by non-fictionalized facts. I gave it a 5 stars. Overall, I think Kim Ji-young, born 1982, is mandatory reading for anyone who wants to expand their perspective on how women lead their lives, and I would recommend it to men and women alike.
Smooth like butter, like
Ladies and gentlemen, we have finally reached the last book on the list, and that is The Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. This book is 670 pages long, and I have quite a few things to say about it. This one is my first adult contemporary novel. I liked it. It may have jerked a few tears here and there, but I am aware of the fact that it is problematic. So it is a guilty pleasure of mine. It is a red flag book. So I'm not sure if I would recommend it. I mean, if you're smart enough to draw the line where the entertainment ends and the problematic stuff begin, then read it. If you're gonna be easily influenced by it, I'd say don't read it. Also, can anyone explain me the title? Why is it called Me Before You? I'm guessing that she's implying who I was before I met you or something on those lines, but I don't know. Plot. I want to say that I dislike this book because I'm strictly against any and every form of assisted suicide, but it's a difficult subject. I don't have any problem with assisted suicide, but how it was done in this book is not right. I also don't have a problem with sad endings, so I have different reasons for disliking it, and I also have reasons for liking it. So I give it 4 stars, which is a very odd number for a book that I have a lot of reasons to dislike, but I also really enjoyed it. So I'm kind of in a very awkward position. So our male lead character, Will Traynor, is a quadruple, meaning he's paralyzed from the waist below. And yes, his personality revolves around it. The irony of this story is that Will Traynor does not have any will to live. Let me quote a few lines so that you can understand his personality properly. Some mistakes just have greater consequences than others, but you don't have to let the result of one mistake be the thing that defines you. Louisa Clark is the female protagonist. Louisa Clark is the protagonist of the story. You, Clark, have the choice not to let that happen. Another line of Will Traynor's. I need to quote all these lines to get my point across. You only get one life. It's actually your duty to live it as fully as possible, says Will Traynor. Another line, just live well, just live. How inspirational coming from a dude who is partaking in assisted suicide. Will basically drags all the meaning out of those quotes by deciding that this all applies to Louisa but not himself.
I don't get this dude. I don't get him at all.
Why does he have to let his disability define him? He tells her to just live, but it's okay for him to just die? It doesn't add up. Another line of Will Traynor's. Live boldly. Push yourself. Don't settle. Underline that part. What if Louisa Clark was happy with a simple life in a small town and a loving family? Like, what's wrong with that? Is it really better to never settle than to try actually being happy in the moment and being content with your life? Is my question. The next line that he mentions is more like a paragraph. The thing is, I get that this could be a good life. I get that with you around, perhaps it could even be a very good life. But it's not my life. It's nothing like the life I want. Not even close. I loved my life, Clark. I really loved it. I loved my job, my travels, the things I was. I loved being a physical person. I liked riding my motorbike, hurling myself off buildings. I liked crushing people in business deals. I liked having sex. I led a big life. I am not designed to exist in this thing. And yet, for all the intents and purposes, it's now the thing that defines me. It is the only thing that defines me, says Will Traynor. It could be a very good life, but it's just not good enough for you, Will. So all the people who love you go to hell and you're going to die because you just don't want to settle for anything less than perfect. That's Will Traynor in one sentence. See, the thing is, if he had been miserable until the very end, I would have had an easier time understanding his character. But no, that didn't happen. If the book showed us that his life was really miserable and he could not go on a single day, it would have been incredibly sad and depressing, but it would make sense. And I would get that. Let him die of cancer. I mean, no offense to anyone with cancer. I'm just saying, let him die of any disease. That would be sad. But at least it wouldn't send such a disturbing message. He's dying because his life is not perfect. Like, it's not at the highest level of perfection it can achieve. He's dying because he is settling for less, which just does not make sense to me. And all the effort everyone put to like try and make him alive, that just goes in vain in the end.
I'm spoiling this book.
Okay, I'm gonna put a spoiler somewhere much before, don't worry. So as it is, the book spends 2/3 of it showing us that they can be a happy couple and they can have happy moments and he can actually love and be happy. But it's just not enough for Will Traynor. It just seems to me like the overall message of the book is very shallow, for one. Nevertheless, I actually enjoyed the parts where Lou and her 35-year-old baby Will Traynor wasn't cribbing about his life. For a second, I actually enjoyed those parts. Now, I'm not claiming to even remotely understand what Will Traynor is going through. I cannot imagine his pain, but he doesn't even try to live. He just doesn't put any effort at all. People like that really piss me off. Will chooses not to be happy or even try because he can no longer go to Paris, he can no longer ski, he can no longer do all those great things, super amazing things that he wanted to do and that he could do before in his life, and just enjoy music, loving and being loved simply won't do for him. That's what really just pisses me off. Will as a character, it doesn't make sense to me. I understand that he lived such a big life, but there's more to life than all these super amazing things he does. He doesn't even look around. He doesn't even look at the people that are trying to like care for him, people who actually love him. He just does not see.
The only thing that's left for him to be is blind. Honestly, if he was blind, things would just make more sense.
Another thing that makes me really mad at him is how in the book he says something like dying is the first time he's actually made his own decision since the accident. First of all, you don't lose all your decisions because of an accident. You don't lose all your choices because you can no longer move your legs and arms. He made tons of choices during the course of the book. He chose to be rude to Louisa Clark. He chose to be nice to Louisa Clark. He chose not to go out. He chose to go out. He chose to go to Mauritius. All those things weren't his choices. Like, are they not choices that he made? If you've read the book, please respond, because he acts like he was just at the pity of other people's decisions, and not once did a person make a decision for him besides his medication, probably, and the doctor. He also had a lot more choices considering all the money he had. Did I mention that he's like this really rich dude? He owns a company and all.
What is it with rich people and like such crappy personalities?
So no, dying wasn't the first choice you made, Will Traynor. What it was that the last choice you made and the last decision you'll ever make.
How do you be so rich and be so stupid at the same time, Will Traynor?
Okay, so it wasn't the accident that took away all his choices. It was deciding to die. And that's common sense. I'm getting like really mad at Will.
If Will was a real person, I'd beat the shit out of him.
It completely blows my mind that there are people who found the ending romantic. Like, I'm not sure how romantic you would find it if the person you loved wanted to commit suicide. It's just not romantic at all. It's the exact opposite. I don't know, maybe I'm built different, but if the person I loved wanted to commit suicide, I would not find it romantic. It's incredibly selfish to do so. So I'd like to just conclude by saying that Will didn't just make a choice for himself when he decided to die, but he made a choice for everyone in his life, everyone that loved and cared for him. And no matter how unpopular that opinion may be, in today's super individualistic world that just sees self-fulfillment as the highest form of achievable goal, I actually believe that our duty not to hurt the people we love and the people that love us in general is a little more important than self-fulfillment and living your life to the fullest. Because I don't think you can ever live your life to the fullest.
There is no destination that's gonna actually make you happy. It's the journey.
That sounds so cheesy, but I had to say it. So yeah, I don't get how Louisa Clark was okay with Will's decision to die. So I would appreciate it if someone can explain me in the comments, because I just don't understand these two characters. Nevertheless, I enjoyed them together when they were like happy. They seemed like a really stable and functional couple. So I'm gonna pick up the second book when I have time, because I want to see what's up with Louisa after Will. Because like BTS said,
Life goes on.
So yeah, I gave Me Before You a 4 stars out of 5. I would have given it a 5 if Will was not so fucking stupid. But yeah. So those were all Namjoon's favorite books. The final verdict is RM's taste in literature is as smooth as butter, and I will pick up every book he recommends from here on because his taste is so diverse and varied. I wouldn't have picked up these books on my own if not for his reading list, because they were very contemplative, self-reflective, and very mind-stretching, if I may say so. Also, how does a man read books on socio-political issues, social issues, and absurd apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic dystopian novels and like books on nature and feminism all at the same time? I mean, I think my bias is Namjoon because his taste in literature, his aesthetic, his new hair.
Talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping, spectacular, never the same, totally unique, completely not ever been done before.
Immaculate, perfection, everything's perfection. Alright then, I'm gonna go jam out to some BTS and find out how to become an army. I probably have like 3 hours of footage to edit. Fun. I hope you right there, have an immaculate day ahead, and don't forget to take care of yourself because we're still in a pandemic. Okay, bye.